But here's what I see myself doing. This is the position that I try to find myself in. This is why when managers threaten, we're not going to give interviews away. It's like, and I don't give a fuck. I see a sport that has many, many positives. I see a sport that, you know what? Here's a good point. This is a moment for MMA media to reflect a little bit, which is going to sound crazy given that I've defended them here pretty strongly in trying to pursue a cause that I saw as obvious. The reason why we all kind of went to the mat for this one is because the consequences of getting it wrong are extraordinary. If you got the safety protocol wrong and there was an outbreak of any kind and people got hurt and or killed, the consequences for the sport and for the UFC would be potentially cataclysmic. That is what the whole purpose of that was. You're just trying to avoid that. That's it. That's all you're trying to avoid. That is the only goal. Let's not do crazy, reckless shit. And so, I've defended them in the pursuit of that. I will say something different, though. Every time I bring up MMA media's shortcomings, everyone in MMA media, for the most part, tells me to go pound sand. They don't want to hear it. They never want to reflect on their failings, on their shortcomings. They never want to have a look in the mirror and say, why do people not trust us sometimes? Why do people view us in a way that we may think is inappropriate given what we do? I've tried to reflect on those at least a little bit. And here's one thing that I come to. Yes, when UFC President Dana White gets out there and says things like to Brett Okamoto in that interview, okay, good, now go promote, it sends the wrong message to the audience. And the audience begins to get the belief that, that's what we do, which is just promotion. And to be sure, part of the job, it's not direct promotion, but in doing fighter breakdowns, in doing fighter interviews, the ending result is that some level of promotion is obviously conferred. Now, what does all this have to do with MMA media shortcomings? Ladies, gentlemen, if big portions of the audience think that what you do is promotion, yes, some of that is because Dana White tells them that. Some of that is because that's the message they've got from consuming your work. That seems very true to me. MMA media, of all the medias in other sports, is by far the most compliant. And you can see why, dude. Dana White tells Brett Okamoto, go promote. You have managers on Twitter today being like, well, we're going to just deny interviews now, which is like, is it in your client's best interest to really do that? Of fucking course not. I mean, it's a totally ridiculous thing to say. Terrible, terrible advising for your clients. But the reason why they think that is because they each kind of exert leverage in that way to get what they want on compliant media, to simply say, okay, I will not ask this question to get this interview. I will treat the subject in this way to secure this access. It's so much access media. It's just access. That has a benefit in certain ways, but it has a tremendous amount of downside. And I think some reflection is owed here. About it can't just be Dana White saying that, because he's not the only one saying that. A lot of the other ones are saying it too. And it's because a lot of the media that is practiced is just PR. So no wonder they get that impression. So what does this have to do with me? I see myself as somebody who tries to go, to the extent possible, in the other direction. I have pivoted away from that because that train's full. I'm going to get on the next train that no one's on, and I'm going to see if that gets me to where I need to go. The amount of people willing to do subservient media, or even just sort of like semi-compromised media, they're not bad people per se, but they're put in difficult situations. And remember, it's not just the individual journalists making those choices. A lot of times it's the companies they work for putting them in uncomfortable positions about, hey, we don't really care about losing access to this or that. We need you to work in such a way to accommodate that. So then they get put in these compromised positions. But like having some self-awareness about this, and do they reject it every time I bring it up? But it's true, man. It's true. It is truly subservient media. How do I know? Wait a year. Some story's going to pop up, and the media is going to get accused of being absolute bootlickers to the UFC. It's gonna happen. I've been doing this for well over a decade. I've seen this. I know how this movie ends, man. I know how it ends. That is one way it definitely ends. So, so what do I see myself as? I see myself as somebody of a bit of a voice in the community that tries to provide an alternate perspective on a number of wide-ranging but important issues related to fighter interests, fighter safety, organizational compliance, and on the fighting side, I try to provide. I don't think that I'm teaching fighters anything, but I do believe that people who don't know hardly anything about fighting, I try to provide with my technique breakdowns a level of information that can help them help them understand the fight game better. I just try to give you as much information to make informed choices and understand things as best as you can. And I guess that's kind of a form of journalism, but I don't really feel like I am owed the title until you really get down there and you write those kinds of reports and you're working sources and blah, blah, blah. I don't do that kind of a thing. But to me, this is a moment where, yes, dude, the abuse being hurled at them, I find ridiculous. On the other hand, stop doing that shit and they'll be a lot less confusing to a lot more people.